Shooting the shiznit, shooting the shiznit. Best little wrestling podcast in the business. Your host BT and all his guests. You'll never know who he'll have next. Shooting the shiznit, shooting the shiznit. Best little wrestling podcast in the business. Shooting the shiznit.
All right, live from 304 Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas. It's an STSpod.club production. It's 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. What do you expect from me, Lance? Come on.
This is sleepers.
Yeah,
sleepers
this is episode 902.
Woo!
Episode 902. My name's BT, and that guy over there. Well, there's no truth to the rumor that even though he did retire from his shoot job, he's not going to be a local weatherman.
No.
There was rumors on Reddit that he was going to go by the gimmick of Memphis Storm Front or Tornado Tupelo. I'm not sure how they got that, but there's no truth to the rumors. He's from Chicago, home of the Chicago Wolves, five-time American League Hockey champions. He's the snark of excellence. My partner in crime, your friend of mine. Well, sometimes. He's Lance Levine, and we're the two tastiest apple pies in the business, in the podcast business. How you doing, Lance?
I thought we were dessert. Cornbread.
Oh, boo, look, the show's over. Well, I'm going to be talking about the Hall of Fame by myself.
You said just apple pie. I thought dessert. Immediately, my mind went to cornbread. Anyway, we're in the Korean smoked Galbi Pringles studios.
Good God.
This beautiful Monday morning in Chicago. I've been going to these like foreign snack places, so I found these Korean Pringles, and they were delicious. They're like rib, like almost like a barbecue rib flavor. So very good. And they're sponsoring us today. It's the Korean Galbi Studios, Pringles Studios. So that's where we are.
I wish they were sponsoring. So that'd be big money. This is our 6th annual. Lance is going to tell us what we're doing, but we're going to do 6th annual Observing the Observer
OTO.
Wrestling Hall of Fame. The first year was with Matt Farmer. We skipped a year, and then Lance was invited to be part of the Hall of Fame, and we started voting and started doing this show. So it's the 6th annual. That's crazy. And it is the Hall of Fame of 2024. Before you start talking anything, I just want you to know, when I tell my votes, I'm using the AJ Styles rule. So I just want you to know that AJ Styles rule is he don't want to be in no stupid Hall of Fame if he's an active wrestler. So there you go, AJ Styles. Yeah.
I thought it had something to do with the crazy math that Dave talks about. Like, there's 17 people eligible, but you divide it by 3, carry the 1, and that's how many you can vote for. So I think you and I differ on that quite a bit. Like, you normally go with whatever the max they allow you to. If
I
Dave
didn't do that this year, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Usually, if Dave says
I do,
up 6, you'll go with 6. And I'll go 2 or 3 for the most part. Sometimes I go 0 if I'm not familiar with the category. I go 0. But yeah, I know we differ on that. But I can't even follow Dave's mathematical logic when he talks about how many are eligible based on United States voters versus Neptunian voters. People who are
it's going to be crazy when we start all these ratings for Netflix, because he's going to say someone turned it on, didn't watch it for 3 seconds. That
counts as a 0.2.
Yeah.
It's also confusing sometimes. So it is the Observing the Observer, the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. So it's the 2024 class. You want me to get into the inductees right away?
Yeah, I just want real quick. We always like to blow smoke about. So you've been doing it. This is your 4th or 5th year. I've been on the panel there, and we talk about. I don't know. We're historians, or I don't know what we are. At one time,
retired pro. I am now.
I was a retired pro. Yeah, what was
we're both retired pros, because I was a professional retail manager, and now I'm retired.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
what
a
was
retired pro. There you go.
I think he's talking about wrestling, Lance. I don't know.
Oh, I see.
But so I've been there. Even when I wasn't following wrestling, he was still sending me about it. So I voted every year that they've had the Hall of Fame. And it's fun to be part of that. I know there are some people out there listening to us going, they don't really give a shit because it's Dave Meltzer. But he was part of our fandom in the sense that if it would have been for Dave, well, me and you may have never met. That's the thing about it. We both started newsletters, something totally different than what Dave was doing because we didn't want to do the news. And because of that, people think Meltzer's just become famous. He was quote unquote famous, unquote, to us and friends, pretty much friends as we hung out together a lot during the early years of the Observer. And I talked to him on a daily basis. So it was fun. I'm not as big a fan of his now. But I'm not going to dog him here on the Observer Hall of Fame. And the Observer Hall of Fame seems to be has more prestige to it than the WWE Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, of course. There's no Vince McMahon limousine drivers in this Hall of Fame.
And when you start going down the names of the people that did get inducted this year, especially the top one, it'll tell you. Not a huge. Go ahead, go through it, and I'll say what yeah.
So I did want to say, since we talked about the categories of the voters, it is reporters, historians, active professionals, and retired professionals. So I think we always land on reporters. That's what we always land on for what we actually are. We were joking around about being retired pros.
Well, they used to always refer to me like in Steve Beverly's newsletter and Wade Keller's newsletter as Memphis wrestling historian.
Oh, so
Brian
historian.
Trammell.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I was going to give you maybe historian a little bit, but you can't remember what you had for breakfast yesterday, so I don't know how much of a historian you are.
Who am I talking to?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, and I know in no way, shape, or form am I a historian. That's
right.
The John McAdam category there. So I say we go with both reporters. We end it with that as we do every year. So the inductees this year. Top dog was Roman Reigns, 66.7%. Me personally, I said, yes, eventually he would be in. We were in with him from the start of the push. There were so many idiots that didn't like it from the beginning, and we were in with it from the very beginning of his push. I thought this year maybe a little too soon, but what do you think? Do you think he deserved it this year?
I don't vote for active wrestlers, but I do think he's
right. The AJ style.
I really think he is a Hall of Famer, very much so when he calls it because of the Gates, the money, Gates money, same thing, but everything is exploded and you whatever you want to say. Yeah. Roman was the man and still is the man in WWE, and everybody. All the old timers saw it. We saw it. I hate to say we saw it, but we did. We saw it in him. I remember them talking about Dusty thinking Roman was going to be, the next big thing, and Paul Heyman thinking also. They were right. I mean, he deserves a Hall of Fame, but he's still active, so I'm just not really.
Yeah,
I didn't vote for him.
I thought it was a year or so too early, but I'm not going to argue it. So then we had Shingo Takagi at 65.6%. I said absolutely. G1 superstar when we do the G1 coverage every year. So for me, Shingo was yes, for sure. Now, Paul Orndorff, I think we're going to differ on this one. He got in at 63.7. For me, he was a flat out no. For me, Paul Orndorff was just another Hogan foil. He was just a guy. And I think the recency of his death is probably what put him in.
I voted for him. It was one of the ones that I got in, so I voted for him. I thought the Hogan run was very important and just an excellent worker. Seemed to be a hard worker backstage. I don't know. I wasn't backstage with him, but I guess because I grew up and I thought Orndorff and Hogan was a hell of a run. So.
There was other guys that Hogan had the same run with. I thought there was the one.
I don't know. There's something about Paul. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there was the one giant house show attendance in Toronto or wherever it was, that everybody talks about. So I don't know. For me, he was just another one of the Hogan foils back in the day. Johnny Rougeau at 62.7%. All I know about that guy is he had kids that were in the business. So I don't know much about him. Then the Young Bucks. I know we'll differ on this one too. 61.3. I say yes, I was a 100% yes for them, for the in-ring, for the merch effect, for All In, the very first All In show. For me, they're the best tag team of all time, and I know you're gonna shoot me on that one. You're gonna
I'm
kill
not
me on
gonna
that
shoot you. I think you just say it to piss people off because there's no way you have even watched enough to say they're the best tag team of all
one.
time.
They're in the Hall of Fame.
They will deserve to be in a Hall of Fame. Like I said, I wouldn't vote for them now, but I honestly think they would have to be considered one of the top tag teams to ever get in the business, changing the business.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's positive changes, if it all ends up the way it's going right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I saw them, I thought they were spot monkeys. Then I become a huge fan of theirs, and I can't watch them now because I just can't watch them. But that don't have anything to do with their ability,
Yeah. To your point about the change of the business, them creating AEW with, some other people involved is what prompted WWE to get so hot and to get so good and to get their shit together because they
I don't think so. I think WWE's always trying to get their shit together, always trying to prove it. It has nothing to do with the Young Bucks and AEW. So.
But I'm just saying the creation of AEW seems, from a timing standpoint, seems to coincide with the fact of when WWE caught fire. At the same time.
And AEW, here's the deal. AEW got so bad that we didn't have anything else to watch. Here's the deal with me and AEW and the whole story is how it ends. It could just be the same story as some money mark that started. Mm-hmm. Now they have accomplished a lot more. Young Bucks, man, big thumbs up for the merch and all that stuff that they did. They just took, it's actually old school. There's, you're not familiar with the Nightmares in Continental Wrestling. They did what the Bucks did back then. They made T-shirts, photos. Danny Davis Nightmare bought in 1986 or 87 bought a Camaro, an IROC Camaro with just his photo money. So it has been done before, but I just don't know what they're already in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. There's no argument about that. They're already there.
Yeah.
But I don't know what their history is going to be.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch some of the other, which you haven't seen when it comes to tag teams, the All Japan stuff, it'll be hard for you to say, and even with me, with the Midnight Express and Rock and Roll, who were my two favorite tag teams, it's hard for me to say best when it comes to any of it because they're all different styles, different this and everything. All right, I'll shut up about the book.
Next was Los Hermanos Dinamita at 61.3%. Pass on that. Didn't know who those
Not
guys
familiar
were.
with them. I know there's going to be some people out there that are and
laughing at us for not knowing them.
Well, they deserve 61%. They deserve it. So
and then Shima, 60.3%. I think I saw one or two matches of him ever. I think he was originally in AEW for like a cup of coffee. So I think that's where I got familiar with that guy.
It's he has probably got more votes and everything. One part of it was that he had a lot to do with independent. Not All Japan, not New Japan. He kind of helped grow, and his style just unbelievable. He was really, really good when he was young, and I watched a lot of their stuff. So
then we got Johnny Saint at 60.3%. All I know about that guy is he was a light heavyweight guy. He was a trainer, very revolutionary lightweight flying style, and did a lot of training for, I guess, NXT Europe, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Johnny Saint's influences every day in wrestling right now. So that's the reason I vote for him every year. I have him on my ballot. So finally got him in. Can you believe it? Jesus Christ.
Thanks to you. And then finally, Bobby Davis at 60.2%. Revolutionary manager. They said he was the predecessor of like Heenan and that whole style. So he was in at 60.2%.
Not familiar with him at all.
Yeah, didn't see any of his stuff either. So. But like half the guys that got in this year, we have opinions on. So, all right. So we're going to do the categories are historical, U.S. and Canada, Japan, Mexico, world, and non-wrestler. So the way we're going to do this is you're going to do all of your picks straight across the board on all the categories, and I'll rebut where needed.
Yeah, well, and you can come back. We're going to do a commercial break after I give mine, and then you're going to come back and give who you picked.
Yep.
I did historical performers. I did. I could have had 7. I did 5 this year with the Samoans as a tag team. Bob Armstrong, who I've tried to get into the Hall of Fame a million times. It feels like just the influence in the South, Continental Wrestling had a huge thing in Smoky Mountain, where also a good feud in Memphis, Smoky Mountain against Memphis. Bob was a big influence, had a whole family full of kids, even someone still working for the WWE today. JYD, who was still on the ballot. I've tried to get him in. I was a huge fan of his in Mid-South. He didn't have – if you just seen JYD in WWE, you didn't see JYD. His stuff in the Mid-South was just – I guess during the time I was growing up was a huge deal to me. Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, to me, they didn't tag long enough, but I always vote for them because they were one of those teams that I saw that was part of me being a tag team art. Was I was a Fabs fan, a Moondogs fan, but when I went up and started watching Crockett, this team was 2 young guys that worked so hard, and Jay OD'd very early. And we saw Ricky go from tag team wrestler to what he ended up being. So Kerry and Kevin Von Erich, Kerry, Kevin, and David Von Erich together, I can't believe that they have not made it to the Hall of Fame yet, but I voted for them. 7 maximum for U.S. Canada modern performers. Is that what it was? Yeah, I did Paul Orndorff, who got in. Rick and Scott Steiner. Huge. I was a huge Sid Vicious fan, and he started in Memphis, and he just recently died. And I picked Bray Wyatt because just a huge Bray Wyatt fan. Don't think he's the thing about it is, I don't know work rate. Was he a great wrestler? But he did come up with a gimmick that was just very, very unique, and was a huge mark for him. As you could tell, most of these people that I vote for, I'm huge marks for. I don't do anything that's because I don't know him or anything like that. Johnny Saint is a guy that has so much influence, and if you listen to any of the British guys talk, or any of the guys that do the hold for hold, he was always an influence. And like I said, I voted for him on all times, and he finally made it. Adrian Street, also a guy that did a gimmick, who was did you ever see Street in the way the gimmick was done?
Oh, which one? The
Adrian Street.
Adorable. Oh no, you're talking about Adrian Street. Only in the After magazines. I thought you were talking about
what he would do is he would come out. Him and his wife would come out, and he'd be really like flamboyantly gay. Right. Yeah. But all of a sudden, it's like he turned a switch, and he would whip your ass. I remember someone saying the F word. He's a F, and saying he's he might be, word. Yeah, he may be one of them, but man, he can whoop your ass. And I just thought that was funny with the Rednecks. And I always vote for Otto Once because he's like the only guy in foreign. This is for New Zealand and everything, that he was in every After mag. He was in every offshoot mag, and I always thought it was cool that they, like Vader went over there and some of the other big names, they always fought him. He was always the Jerry Lawler of that area because he never lost. He always won. And they had seasons of stuff in that area. So it was really neat the way they did it. Non-wrestlers, I've always voted for 2 guys that I've always voted for, Dave Brown and Stanley Weston. Dave Brown was Memphis Wrestling. Him and Lance Russell, he was, Dave ended up doing with Corey in the 90s after after Lance left. Stanley Weston, that guy is the reason for After Mags. And he, Bill After belonged in the Hall of Fame. That guy did too. He was to keep publishing wrestling magazines when, probably people told him, you don't know what you're doing. And those magazines were a huge, huge part of my childhood. Yeah. Somewhere there's like 3 or 4 milk cartons or crates full of magazines still of those After mags, the Stanley Weston mags. So
Love My Mama's House. I don't
think they are. I think they they have been transferred from there. So, but yeah. All right, let's take a quick commercial break. You got anything to say about my picks?
Yeah, just really quickly.
All right.
I'm not going to shit on any of them. I disagree with the Orndorff one. I don't disagree with much of what you said. Sid, probably not. I thought Bray was an interesting pick because, like you said, Bray came up with a lot of unique concepts. Work rate, it was one of those things where every once in a while he'd have a great match. I think probably more dependent on who he was in there with, but the talent was there. The brain was definitely there. So I could see him getting in down the line. I do. The Samoans I thought was an interesting pick. He kind of went past it really quickly. I don't think it was necessarily because they passed away that you said them. I think that it's because you were watching Young Rock a lot and they were featured on Young Rock.
No, I just being a I say we
Young Rock reminded you of that.
Yeah.
And I think that might have put him top of mind for you.
Huge tag team person.
Right.
I always have been. I was a Jerry Lawler fan, Bill Dundee, maybe Handsome Jimmy. But when it came to tag teams, to me, the whole deal was neat. Mm-hmm. I always liked a tag team with a gimmick. I always and the Samoans were, the Moondogs were kind of like the Samoans were like the Moondogs. So I like that whole aspect of, they had this aura about them that you really, as a fan and at that age that I was watching them, are these guys really savages? Mm-hmm. Are they really that crazy? And I think that's one of the things that I really liked about them. And I don't know, just something about the whole lineage of, so many of them, still so many of them. But, we haven't really had one that's just god awful horrible. That's weird. Right. Just any guy like Yokozuna, who everyone tells you moved faster and easier and light as, a guy a third of his weight and everything. Right. Just huge Samoan fans. I was surprised that they're not in it. It's just really weird, I think.
And then you skipped through the categories. Did you not have a Japan person?
I did not this year.
Okay.
No. Right, I did the first category I was telling you was historical performers, and the other one was modern performers in U.S. and Canada. The other one was European, Australia, New Zealand. Yeah.
So before we go to break, I will leave you with the tease that we had one overlapping pick.
Oh, wow. That's usually right, though. We usually have one overlapping pick. But before we go to I actually voted for two. Last year, I don't think I voted for anyone that got into the Hall of Fame, but I got Paul Orndorff this year and Johnny Saint. So let's go commercial break. We'll come right back. We'll come back with Lance's picks.
Pink.
Don't miss Memphis Wrestling Live. This Saturday, December 28th, watch AEW World's End at Dave & Buster's in Memphis. It's free to watch. Next Sunday, January 5th, Calling All Juggalos. Don't miss our first TV taping of 2025, featuring Violent J from the Insane Clown Posse, plus TNA star AJ Francis. Meet them both at our VIP experience. Sunday, January 26th, join us and celebrate our 4-year anniversary. Don't miss Super Bout 4 at the Wrestle Center. Saturday, February 1st, watch WWE Royal Rumble with us at Dave & Buster's. It's free. Saturday, February 8th, Memphis Wrestling returns to Strayhorn High School for a big event benefiting the Strayhorn Band Boosters. All tickets are on sale now. Get yours right now at memphiswrestling.tv.
All right, real quick note, if you're watching this on Monday morning with us, I used the most updated commercial for upcoming events. If you wanted to see World's End by AEW, you missed it because this is Monday and that was Saturday. So sorry about that, folks. But all right, buddy, tell me, who did you pick?
They can watch the rerun, the replay.
There we go, the replay. There we go.
Replay of that PLE.
And then, okay. I was just thinking about a pay-per-view for AEW. I started getting sick. Sick at my stomach.
All right. My votes. We're going to start with the historical category. I picked 3, even though we were allowed 7.2 or whatever the math was. So I picked 3. My first pick was British Bulldogs. I resisted them for years because I'm so anti-steroids. In the Baseball Hall of Fame, I don't want Barry Bonds in there. I don't want Sammy Sosa in there. I'm anti-steroids in sports.
Boo! Where's my boo?
They're just too influential.
You don't get it. You don't get
especially
it.
Dynamite Kid. I have to. Of course, I did not boo any of your picks. Let me remind
Well,
you.
I'm not booing your pick. I'm booing your steroid thing. We do not we do not look at steroids the same way. Just
I
put it that
have
way.
to honor the Bulldogs because of all the hell that Billington went through and endured. So for me, they were an early expansion of the WWF pick, an early favorite for me of those two guys, British Bulldogs.
And the dog. We love the dogs.
That's
So there
right.
you go.
When they get in, I want Matilda to be included in
That's
the act.
right. That's right.
So, all right. Then I have the Hart Foundation. I voted for them before. Great heels initially. The tandem moves. Brett was so good. You knew right away that Brett was going to be the star of the act. And B, he covered for the fact that Neidhart was kind of just a guy. Not that Neidhart sucked or anything, but he was just a guy. In comparison to Brett, he was just a guy. But the greatness of Bret Hart made that act. Jimmy Hart completed the picture. Always an entertaining act. Same thing with foils of the Bulldogs in a large extent too. So, and then my pick, the one common pick that we had was Kerry, Kevin, and David Von Erich. Despite the short tenure of being on top, they have to be in. There's no way those guys aren't in, like I think you even said. When WWF was dominating everything, they were dominating media, magazine covers, everything. Those guys had the PWI covers. The Von Erichs got on those covers. I would race home from work on Saturday afternoons because the World Class was on Saturday afternoon at like 5 o'clock on whatever UHF channel in Chicago. I'd race home to make sure I saw it, because I had to watch it. And I think the movie coming out, which, there was some speculation the movie would get them in. I think the movie was kind of mediocre reception of the movie. So that kind of maybe didn't help their cause, actually, because there was a lot of people very in favor of the movie and a lot of people thought the movie sucked. So I think the richness of their story has to get them in, period.
And you're right about that. About I've always tell the story, and I can't remember which one came on first, but I would stay up because we got it on a local channel with the antenna outside. But the local channel had Next Generation Star Trek first or World Class, whatever. And I got to watch both of those on a late Saturday night. And at the time, Saturday Night Live was really hot, but I was not watching anything except those two shows right there. So, yeah, it's just so weird not to have them, and there's so much debate on who was the best, whatever. It's perfect story. It sounds like I'm about to have a stroke or something there. This is a perfect story of guys that when it came to work rate, if you go back and look at them, it had absolutely nothing to do with how good of wrestlers they were. They were just fucking over. And if you talk to anyone that worked with them and against them, except for David, Kerry and Kevin were stiff as fuck. So they were in there just fighting for real. So
yeah, and I mean, obviously the whole feud with the Freebirds was what put it over. It was the perfect, the pretty boy baby faces from Texas, the favorite sons of Texas, and then you got the Southern badasses coming in and just raising hell. It just, everything was perfect about that era, that feud. And obviously when they split them up and they were no longer feuding with the Von Erichs, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same, but it was so red hot for that, whatever it was, 2 years or so that they worked together. They have to be in. They have to.
I agree.
So, all right, then moving on to U.S. and Canada, I had 3 picks here. I went with Mark and Jay Briscoe. Question is, does tragedy get you in, or not yet per se? I thought, Jay Briscoe Jay Briscoe passing away in the horrible accident and everything, was that going to get them in? In-ring excellence for many years, obviously, but it was on the small stage. Had they stuck in WWE, would they be in by now, or would they not have been in by now because they were in WWE? So very, unique situation. Mark is still excelling as a solo, I think. And I think they're a lock to get in eventually, but it probably just wasn't their time yet. I think that there's still the stigma of the fact that they worked for so many years for ROH when ROH was at best the third or fourth best promotion.
I never look at it that way because all these little small promotions, like Mid-South Wrestling and people like that, got all these, Hall of Famers in them. I just did, Briscoe's one of them, still alive, still in the business, working every day, and that's the reason I didn't vote on him. But if you watched any, when it comes to tag teams, There, when I would watch the ROH pay-per-views, and I really watched almost every ROH pay-per-view for 5 years, I would go through. I wouldn't watch all the matches, but I always watch those two guys' matches, whether they're tag team. So that says something. I would skip matches, but them two guys I never did, because they always put great matches. There's one match, I think it's the third FTR match, that was on a ROH pay-per-view I still haven't seen, and it's supposed to be fantastic too.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
and
I'd agree. Eventually Hall of Famers,
I'm always going to have a special place in my heart for them, because when we got to meet them, when Jay, just not too long before Jay passed away, we met them in Nashville at that StarCast, and just the most humble, nicest, most respectful guys that you would never, from that image of, especially with Mark with the missing teeth and everything, you would never think that those guys were that way. But man, just so respectful, and just two of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Then my first pick that made it this year is the Young Bucks. We talked about them earlier. I actually got 2 picks in this year, like you did. This is not, what's interesting is this is not at all a banner year for the Young Bucks. This is actually a very down year for the Young Bucks.
Yes.
But it's the past years and their influence on the business that gets them in. And we kind of debated that earlier already. And then my next U.S. pick was CM Punk. Sort of the opposite of the Young Bucks, because they're, ironically, they're the nemesis of CM Punk right now, in that this year is, for me, this is the year that got me to vote for him. Controversy has followed him his entire career, whether he's wanted it or not, or brought it on or not. But he's always been a difference maker.
I will vote for him. I will when he retires. He was one of those guys that probably will get my first vote after he retires.
A lot of people, and I think this includes you, a lot of people trace the downward spiral of AEW this year to when he got fired. But he's always been strong in the ring. He's always been a strong promo. This was the year that made him for me, as far as being a needle mover and a difference maker, because as soon as he went to WWE, everything just exploded for him.
Wait, turn around. Go back just a little bit and think of when he went to AEW, how hot it was.
There. Yep.
And how hot the merch was, how hot everything was. And we talked about this. You asked me this just about 6 weeks ago. When did you think you stopped?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the conversation we had when he left. When he left, and I quit watching Collision.
Yeah.
I said to you, how many people like me left too?
Apparently a lot.
There's been a lot. And then, yeah. Crazy.
The timing. And then I'll also, and this is from a local standpoint, the Chicago audience reaction to him whenever he returns or whenever he comes out is just so huge and so real. And you don't see that in other people. You don't see that in other cities. When, Tiffany Stratton goes back to Minneapolis, there's a pop, but it's not the same as when Punk is in Chicago.
It reminds me of the old school Jerry Lawler, for instance, in Memphis at the Coliseum, stuff like that. There's just the Chicago. It is something different. He is so over with those
Chicago. Yep. So Japan, that's why I asked you about Japan. You didn't have a pick. Shingo Takagi was my other pick that got in this year. My question is, will he wear the girdle to the Hall of Fame induction? That's what I'm wondering.
I hope he wears that velvet one so I can touch it.
Awesome performer every time, especially the G1. He never lets up. I had never seen any of his stuff before New Japan, so I know he was in Noah or one of the other groups. But his tenure in New Japan was good enough for me to get him in. And knowing that he already had good years before for the other groups. So Shingo Takagi definitely in.
I think something that New Japan did with him, and I just loved it when they do this, is that the building history, like they will give you the history of Shingo's been in this building, he's wrestled 25 times and he's won 23 of them, and you're thinking, well, I know it ain't been with New Japan, it's with these other places, but I'm like you, I didn't pick up on him. I seen a couple of his matches, PWG. I seen some stuff, but nothing big. And then when he started, huge fan of his, It's one of those guys that just doesn't look like he's going to put on a good match, but he never has a bad match.
Yeah,
He
never a
never
letdown.
has a bad match.
So
yeah.
I mean,
I will vote
for years we had Okada and Ibushi were our top guys in the G1, and now it's definitely, and Ishii too. But now it's been Shingo for the last couple of years. It's Shingo.
Yep.
Mexico, I had no picks. World, I had no picks. I didn't know enough of those guys or saw enough in the ring to garner my vote. So it would have been phony for me to vote for any of them. And then finally, the non-wrestler category, I only had one, and it's Mike Tenay. Every year, my annual vote is going to be Mike Tenay until he gets in. I'm not sure why he never gets in. Smart guy. Great babyface announcer, knew all of the styles, was equally adept to call Lucha Libre, to call TNA, to be in WCW. He was synonymous with TNA for many years. So I don't think that there's certain guys like, say, Ric Flair, CM Punk. There's a fuck that guy faction for those guys. There's no fuck that guy faction for Mike Tenay. You never hear anything negative about Mike Tenay. I don't know. It's just always positive about Mike Tenay. He's got to be in. I don't know why he's not in yet. He's got to be in, and eventually he will be. So those
I agree. I like Mike Tenay. He's always been a good announcer, and apparently probably done a lot more backstage than we'll ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I was mentioning just no big disagreement with you. I don't vote, like I said, AJ Styles rule.
Yeah.
But other than that, no big disagreement. The thing that I thought was interesting is all this, as we spoke at the very beginning of this show, there was so much negativity about Roman Reigns and him being a babyface and all that stuff, and no one liked him, and he, and I hate saying internet wrestling community because we're kind of part of that, but I'm just talking about kind of the fringe people that just hated Roman Reigns, and me and you were saying, this guy has at least a 4-star match. This was way back.
Yeah, way back. Before he even turned. When he was still a face. When he was
and
the
me,
top face.
I was a huge Shield fan, huge Wyatt family fan. I loved all that stuff. There's all kinds of things that can happen now. There's, the thing with Punk and the thing with Rollins, and there's just a history there. Never say never when it comes to John Moxley. You never know when he'll come back. But Reigns has done, he's headlined some of the biggest shows in our history of the business. In our history of the business, Gates, everything. Take a look.
Yep.
It's him. He's probably got more big gates, record-breaking gates, than guys like even Stone Cold, maybe Stone Cold, The Rock, because of the amount, how many shows they've done and how much they've drawn. So just last year, by the way. All right, anything you want to throw in there?
I'll add on that point as much of a. All right,
Sorry.
Buff, you're never getting in. We can just agree on that, I think. As much as I agree with you on many of the stuff you said about Reigns, right now, yeah, I think they used that to death on last night's pay-per-view too. As much as I agree with you on Reigns, I think a huge part of the WWE success is the brand right now. It's not necessarily Roman. Like at one time, it was Hogan was the man. Austin was the man. I don't know that you can necessarily say Roman is the man.
I gotta say that. I disagree with you. Cena was the man. I know what you're saying.
Even with Cena, I think that was an ensemble. I think it was an ensemble. And I think with Reigns, it's an ensemble as well.
Go back and look at any of the gates, especially the house shows. If you had Cena on the show, it was almost double.
Yeah.
Oh, the Jonesboro had like 1,200 people one time, and the next time they had almost 4,000. Just because of Cena. His name, like you said, Stone Cold, Hogan, maybe Flair. Those guys did rock. They moved the needle at the crowd. But I understand it is an event now. It is an event. But it's Roman's a big part of that.
It's not, necessarily Brock versus Rock.
They sell the tickets before you even know who's going to be there. So it really don't matter. Really quick, if you're listening here on a Saturday morning, I should have said this at the very beginning.
Monday
on Monday morning, not Saturday morning. Look, Monday morning,
And buy you a calendar.
Wednesday the 1st, we do 5-minute time limit. There will be links all over the place, especially if you're listening to us on Patreon. Come watch the show, be part of the studio audience if you want to. And we may even have an appearance this time of Lance Levine. You just never know. Woo! All right, thanks everybody. Same bad time, same bad channel. Best little wrestling podcast in the business. I'm really getting hungry.
For breakfast?
Be there, and as everyone knows, I love my mama.
And as everyone knows, I have fun everywhere I go. And right now, I think I'm going to IHOP for breakfast because it's early on Monday morning. I got nothing.